November 15, 2004, Ford Motor Company's chief financial officer signs a sale agreement for Jaguar Racing, the Formula One team Ford had owned for 5 years. The purchase price is £1 sterling. The buyer is an Austrian energy drink company most people have never heard of in motorsport. Ford had paid £75 million to acquire the team in 1999, then spent another £325 million on operations, engines, drivers, and factory upgrades. Total outlay, over £400 million. Return, 2 podiums, 0 wins, 7th place in the Constructors' Championship. The buyer renames the team Red Bull Racing within 24 hours. Over the next 19 seasons, that £1 team wins 6 Constructors' titles, 8 Drivers' Championships, and 122 Grand Prix victories. This is the story of the most expensive quit in motorsport history. In June 2000, Ford Motor Company completed its acquisition of Stewart Grand Prix for £75 million. Stewart GP had been founded 3 years earlier by Sir Jackie Stewart, the 3-time world champion, and his son Paul. The team had scored 1 win in its short history. Johnny Herbert at the Nürburgring in 1999. Ford saw potential. The company had been supplying Cosworth engines to several teams throughout the 90s and wanted a works program to compete with Ferrari, Mercedes, and BMW. The Stewart deal gave them a turnkey operation, a factory in Milton Keynes, an experienced technical staff, and an existing Cosworth engine partnership Ford already controlled. Ford rebranded the team Jaguar Racing, linking it to the luxury mark they had acquired in 1989. The rebrand was expensive: new livery, new sponsors, new driver contracts. Eddie Irvine was signed from Ferrari for a reported $8 million per season. Luciano Burti and then Pedro de la Rosa filled the second seat. The 2000 season, Jaguar's first, yielded 4 points and 9th place in the constructors' standings. The 2001 season brought a podium at Monaco, Irvine finishing 3rd. But the underlying performance was inconsistent. Chassis development lagged. The Cosworth engine, while reliable, was down on power compared to Ferrari and BMW. By 2002, Jaguar had spent an estimated £200 million and had just 2 podiums to show for it. Between 2000 and 2004, Jaguar Racing's technical leadership changed 4 times. Gary Anderson left in 2001. Niki Lauda was hired as team principal in 2001, then departed in 2002 after disagreements with Ford's board over budget approvals. Gunther Steiner served briefly as technical director before moving to NASCAR. Tony Purnell, an engineer who had previously run Pi Research, took over operations in 2002 and lasted until the sale. The instability showed on track. The R3 chassis, introduced in 2002, was overweight and understeered in slow corners. The R4, rushed for 2003, suffered gearbox failures in 6 of the first 8 races. Mark Webber, signed in 2003, scored Jaguar's best finish that year, 4th in Brazil. But the team ended the season 7th in the standings with just 18 points. Christian Klein and Webber drove the R5 in 2004, Jaguar's final season. The car DNF'd in 11 of 18 races. Webber scored Jaguar's last points with a 7th place in China. Ford's premier automotive group, which housed Jaguar cars, Land Rover, Aston Martin, and Volvo, was under severe financial pressure. Jaguar Cars itself was losing over $1 billion annually. The decision to divest the F1 team was made in Q3 2004. Ford's CFO, Don Leclerc, instructed the motorsport division to find a buyer quickly and minimize severance liabilities. Dietrich Mateschitz, co-founder of Red Bull GmbH, had been exploring F1 entry since 2003. Red Bull had sponsored Sauber since 1995, but Mateschitz wanted a works team to control branding and driver selection. His advisor, Niki Lauda, suggested buying Jaguar rather than starting from scratch. Mateschitz and Lauda met with Ford executives in September 2004. The offer was £1, plus assumption of all liabilities. Those liabilities included a 10-year lease on the Milton Keynes factory, pension obligations for 380 employees, outstanding supplier invoices totaling approximately £15 million, and the 2005 FIA entry fee Ford had already paid. Ford's finance team calculated the net present cost of shutting down the team versus transferring it. shutdown would require severance for the entire workforce under UK employment law, environmental remediation of the factory site, and early termination fees for supplier contracts. Total estimated cost, £60 to £80 million. The Red Bull offer removed all of that. Ford accepted on November 15, 2004. The sale agreement was 2 pages. Red Bull paid £1 in cash at signing. Mateschitz immediately renamed the team Red Bull Racing and announced a partnership with Cosworth for 2005 engines. He hired Christian Horner, a 29-year-old former driver who had been running the Arden team in Formula 3000, as team principal. David Coulthard and Christian Klein were signed as drivers. Red Bull's first season, 2005, was a learning year. The RB1 chassis was essentially the Jaguar R5 with revised aerodynamics. Coulthard scored the team's first podium at the European Grand Prix in May, finishing third. The team ended the season 7th in the Constructors' Championship with 34 points, more than Jaguar had scored in 2003 and 2004 combined. Mateschitz authorized a complete technical overhaul. Adriannewey, the most successful designer in modern F1, was poached from McLaren in 2006 with a contract reportedly worth £7 million per year. Newey redesigned the entire car philosophy, lowering the center of gravity and optimizing the aerodynamic package. The RB3, introduced in 2007, took Red Bull's first pole position at Silverstone. In 2009, Red Bull signed Sebastian Vettel from Toro Rosso and gave him the RB5. Vettel won 4 races that season. The team finished second in the Constructors' Championship behind Brawn GP. The 2010 RB6 was the class of the field. Vettel won 5 races and took the driver's title at the final race in Abu Dhabi. Red Bull won the Constructors' Championship by 498 points to McLaren's 454. Between 2010 and 2013, Red Bull won 4 consecutive doubles, 4 constructors' titles and 4 drivers' titles for Vettel. Total race wins in that period, 38. After the dominance of the early 2010s, Red Bull's competitiveness declined when F1 switched to hybrid power units in 2014. Renault's power unit lagged behind Mercedes and Ferrari. Red Bull won races opportunistically but could not challenge for titles. In 2016, Red Bull promoted Max Verstappen from Toro Rosso mid-season. Verstappen, 18 years old, won his first race in Spain. Between 2016 and 2020, Verstappen won 10 races but was limited by the Renault engine deficit. Red Bull terminated the Renault partnership after 2018 and switched to Honda power units for 2019. The Honda partnership delivered wins but not championships. In 2021, FIA rule changes regarding aerodynamics and tyre construction leveled the field. The RB16B, powered by Honda's final-year engine, was competitive with Mercedes throughout the season. Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton fought for the title across 22 races. Verstappen won the championship at the final race in Abu Dhabi in controversial circumstances. For 2022, F1 introduced ground-effect aerodynamics. Adriannewey's RB18 exploited the new regulations better than any competitor. Verstappen won 15 of 22 races. Red Bull won the Constructors' Championship by 759 points to Ferrari's 554. In 2023, Verstappen won 19 of 22 races. Red Bull scored 860 points, the highest total in F1 history. Ford left Formula One entirely after selling Jaguar in 2004. The company divested Jaguar cars to Tata Motors in 2008, Land Rover soon after, and Aston Martin in 2007. Ford refocused on its core North American truck and SUV business. For 2 decades, Ford had no presence in F1. In February 2023, Red Bull announced a technical partnership with Ford for the 2026 season. F1's engine regulations are changing in 2026, removing the complex MGU-H hybrid component and increasing electrical power output. Red Bull had been developing its own power unit at a new facility in Milton Keynes, having split from Honda. Ford will provide technical expertise, engineering resources, and brand partnership. The engines will be branded Ford Red Bull. Financial terms were not disclosed, but industry analysts estimate Ford is paying between $50 and $100 million per season for branding rights, technical collaboration, and marketing access. Red Bull retains full ownership of the power unit intellectual property and the team. Ford is effectively a subcontractor and sponsor on the team it used to own outright. The Red Bull team Ford sold for £1 is now valued at approximately $2 billion by Forbes. Mateschitz' estate, which includes Red Bull Racing and the parent company, was valued at €20.4 billion in 2022. The £1 sale delivered a return multiple in excess of 200 billion%. Ford spent £400 million over 5 years to finish 7th in the Constructors' Championship twice. Red Bull spent £1 and won 6 Constructors' titles, 8 Drivers' titles, and 122 races. The difference was not the money. Ford had the resources. They had Cosworth engines, experienced drivers, and a modern factory. What they lacked was stability, technical vision, and commitment through the long rebuild. Mateschitz gave Adriannewey creative freedom, hired a young team principal in Christian Horner, and committed to a 10-year horizon. Ford's board wanted quarterly results. The lesson is not that selling is always wrong. The lesson is that the cost of quitting is everything you don't get to build. If you want the full breakdown of this story with financial exhibits and primary sources, check The Vault. Rühl Laurenz. Gumroad.com @lklbg. New stories every week. Thanks for watching The Pit Economics.